China and Japan enjoyed warming bilateral ties in 2018 and held a security dialogue on Friday in Beijing. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Kong Xuanyou, Japan's Senior Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs Takeo Mori, and defense officials of both countries attended the dialogue. This is the first such meeting since October 2017, when a dialogue was held in Tokyo. The two sides exchanged their views on defense issues and both agreed it is very important to deepen mutual trust. Analysts say although China-Japan ties have been improving since last year, uncertainty, though, remains. In his policy speech to the parliament on Monday, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe pledged he will further expand the already improving ties with China. But he added Japan still needs to bolster its defense capability amid concerns about Chinese military activity and uncertainty over the DPRK's denuclearization. How to look at these mixed messages? How can the two countries build up greater mutual trust? Joining me in the Beijing studio is Professor Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies. From Singapore, Victor Dale, Assistant Professor at the University of Hong Kong. And from Kyoto via Skype is Takesato Watanabe, Professor Emeritus at Doshisha University. And welcome, gentlemen, to The Point. Professor Rong, let me go to you first. In the policy speech to Parliament on Monday, Abe said Japan-China relations have fully returned to a normal orbit. I will elevate it to a next level by deepening exchanges in every area in all levels. How do you see bilateral ties going ahead in 2019, and what are the main obstacles for the two sides to boost cooperation in every area, in all levels, starting, for example, in security?
Oh, indeed. I think the bilateral relationship between China and Japan has been on a steady sort of upswing, and particularly after the exchange of visit between Premier Li Keqiang and also, I think, Premier Shinzo Abe last year. And this year is going to also a big year for China-Japan relationship, because I think the Japanese side is really preparing something big, the G20 summit, and also in the hope that the Chinese president will also take the opportunity to visit that, even though the Chinese has repeatedly said while it support the continued high-level exchanges, but efforts have to be made to create a better atmosphere and the conditions for that.
Well, Professor Tail, during Chinese Premier Li Keqiang's visit to Japan last May, Abe said that relations between the two countries have moved to the coordination era from competition. Are we there yet?
Not quite, because the real problem is that China-Japan relations cannot be detached from U.S. relations with Japan and U.S. relations with China. So it becomes exceedingly difficult for Abe to be able to actually walk the talk, meaning he has to balance between building very good relations with the United States and trying to mend fences with China. So these two tasks are not actually convergent. In fact, they are divergent at this point in time. And the difficulties are structural, so not quite, even though I would say that China-Japan relations is actually on the mend.
How important, Professor Watanabe, how important is a better Sino-US, Sino-Japanese relationship for the Abe government? And also, as Professor Rong pointed out, it is expected, it is likely that Chinese President Xi Jinping could visit Japan for the G20 summit, which will be held in Osaka in June. And if that happens, that will be the first time a Chinese president visits Japan in the past 10 years. How important that would be for the two countries?
In October last year, Abe visited Beijing and had a direct talk with your President Xi Jinping, and they agreed that to enhance friendship, also the economic relations and political cooperation. This is very good, but actually, Mr. Trump of the United States President, he says many things which are not coordinated with the united theory, or you see, the fairness in principle. So Mr. Abe is put into difficulty how he can behave in front of the United States. But at the same time, his historical idea of the past, say Nanjing massacre, he doesn't admit it like that, actually. So he wants to improve the relations with China because he has the election for upper house in July. This is the biggest reason why he is going to deepen and fasten the relations with China. So this is very complicated for the world politics, especially in the East Asian area.
Professor Rong, yeah, in case President Xi is able to make that trip, what would it mean for the two countries?
Well, of course, it would mean a lot, I mean, for the bilateral relationship and two important neighbors, and the second and the third largest economy for the world. I think for me, the first is, of course, it would indicate that the relationship is really back to the track and on a steady sort of growth. And more importantly, I think there are speculations that if, I mean, President Xi would visit Japan, there may have another, I mean, new sort of agreement or statement that would be signed, and in the context that to reflect the changing dynamic of the relationship. And it would also important for the two countries to further strengthening the practical cooperations, areas of practical cooperation that have been agreed during the visit by Prime Minister Abe. And thirdly, I think it would also help the two countries to find a way to better address the issues, I mean, complicated issues in security issues and others that has been disturbing and affecting the steady development of relationship.
Right.
So this is going to be big, but of course there are some uncertainties.
Yeah. Well, coming back to defense issues, Japan's latest national defense guideline was approved last month, which referred to China's military activities in the East China Sea and other waters as a source of strong concern in the region. In response, Beijing has strongly objected to the guideline, criticizing Abe's government for fanning the threat of China. Professor Teo, how do you read the mixed messages that Japan wants to elevate cooperation with China on the one hand, but also highlights China's so-called threat on the other hand?
I think it reflects Japan's multidimensional policies in handling both the U.S. relations and also with her relations with China. So the defense guidelines is actually published not annually, but I would say ever so often when they tend to look and revise their guidelines. And in this respect, Japan's strategy in the long run is to actually tighten their alliance with the United States. So this means that the Japanese are looking to work closely with the United States, regardless of who is actually the occupier of the White House. In that respect, the guidelines is actually looking at U.S.-Japan cooperation for the next 10 years, for the next decade and beyond.
Okay.
And Japan has actually needs to justify the purchase of the 140 F-35 airplanes. And so in terms of trying to get into space security and also cyber security research, to that extent, Japan really needs to emphasize the need for spending all this money and undertaking all these policies. And stipulating Chinese activities in the East China Sea is one natural way of doing of justifying this.
The ruling Liberal Democratic Party's acting director of Foreign Policy Division, Keitaro Ohno, said that face-to-face we're smiling, but under the table we're kicking each other. Now, he told a group of U.S. journalists so in December. Professor Watanabe, is that the reality of Japan's balancing economic interdependence on security concerns with regard to China?
That's a very good expression to signify the relations between, you see, China and Japan, and also referring to United States. Mr. Abe's policies or concern is that he wants to strengthen the ties with the United States, and also Mr. Trump wants to sell so many things, especially high-tech technology, air carriers, boat, and such and such. And Mr. Trump is unstable, and also he wants to get the achievement through economic relations with Japan first. But all of these things are not going well. And I believe that Japanese people and the United States Americans, and also Chinese, and also Koreans, both South and North, they must be very friendly. But on the words, Mr. Abe wants to be friendly, and Mr. Trump is also the same thing. But actually, they have their own ideas and theories of the benefit.
All right.
So this is very much complicated.
Okay. So as I said, or as that official said, LDP official said, and this next quote is along the same line: Japanese economic growth now depends on its ties to China, but the strategic tensions are structural and are not likely to dissipate. So, Professor Rong, how does China look at the dilemma Japan is faced with?
I think China certainly understands that mindset, but as far as China is concerned, I think we would hope that Japan would follow the consensus, political consensus that has been reached between the two leaders years ago, that each other, both China and Japan, should view each other as an opportunity instead of a threat, and support each other's peaceful rise. This is a political consensus that should serve as a guideline of a steady relationship. Despite the fact that there are issues, particularly the lack of strategic trust, and the security dialogues like that is important. First, I think help understand, increase understand. But more importantly, as far as this round is concerned, that it also works for promotion of more exchanges at between the defense officials, starting from highest level to the middle and even lower levels.
All right, dialogue is always good. Many thanks. We're going to leave it there in the Beijing studio. Vice President of China Institute of International Studies, Professor Rong Ying; from Tokyo, Takesato Watanabe, Professor Emeritus at Doshisha University; and from Singapore, Victor Tail, Assistant Professor at the University of Hong Kong. And that's all for this, the last edition of The Point in the Chinese Year of the Dog. According to the Chinese zodiac, the Year of the Pig will start on the 5th of February. I wish all of you a happy, healthy and prosperous New Year. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with Alex. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.